Welcome back to the Legacy Premier League. Brought to you by Cardboard.com as one of our primary sponsors. There's also other sponsors, but the notepad is so blurry I can't read it. I believe they are Watsy and Scott Monroe. Have I read those correctly?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes, good. Okay, that is incredibly blurry. Welcome back. We've got a playoff match. I am Vince, also as President Kenobi on the internet. I'm joined by Edgar.
Hey guys, happy to be here.
We are about to see two giants of the format. We're about to see Bonde and Mengu play off. We've got Sneak and Show on the Bonde side, and we've got Bug Delver on the Mengu side. And Mengu had put Bonde on Death and Taxes, as that is Bonde's favourite deck, I believe, same as myself. And he has not been rewarded for that attempt to meta game. He's now up against Sneak and Show instead. How do you feel about this matchup, Edgar? The Bug Delver deck versus traditional Sneak and Show.
This is a matchup that's been pretty close historically. The Delver variants versus Sneak and Show has always come down to what variant the Delver deck's on. Usually the black builds with discard spells are better versus the Sneak and Show deck since they can apply different kinds of pressure. But the matchup has always been really close, and I think Bonde or Mengucci rather is actually going to have some tools, some new cards to help out the matchup. But why don't we go over and see what the Twitter poll results were, because the wonderful people on Twitter voted to see what they thought, who they thought were going to win, and it looks like Mengucci itched ahead 59% versus Bonde's 41%. So they took the Delver side, and honestly, I think I kind of feel similar about that. I don't know about you.
There's some like new tech. I mentioned that Sneak and Show being traditional, but it's more recently that it started to play like more permission. I know that when I was playing Sneak and Show, perhaps earlier this year, maybe last year, I think it was the last time I was playing quite a bit. I wasn't playing Days. There's been this like uptick in Days' play in Legacy. Like we've seen even like people try and Storm and stuff. So perhaps that might help him. But I guess the hand attack might give Bug a bit of an edge. But I don't know. I think there's just hands where Sneak and Show can have one piece of permission, and then it can just fire off the combo, protect it with that piece of permission, and then boom, there's an Emrakul in play. So I think I'm on the Sneak and Show side.
All right. Let's look over at Mengucci's list first, I suppose, and see what he has. So the first thing that I'm noticing here, like we mentioned earlier, he's got the two Thoughtseize and the two Hymns, and he's actually got 6 copies of various force effects in the main deck, which is pretty huge in a matchup like this. But something else I wanted to touch upon, it's like you mentioned earlier, where with the Emrakul coming into play, usually Emrakul is the better thread you can put into play off Sneak and Show in the Delver matchup specifically. Usually Grizzlebrand is the more powerful one, but against Delver specifically, Emrakul has historically been better. But Mengucci with 2 copies of Oko Thief of Crowns, which has been destroying formats in and out, and is now also another main deck answer to Emrakul that these Delver decks usually didn't have before. So that's going to make things a little bit more complicated for Michael, I believe.
I think it's difficult to actually look at this from a historical perspective when you've got lists playing weird tech, and we've got like brand new cards, essentially like Oko, that, like you said, have been tearing up and dominating formats. I lost some Legacy games this morning to an Oko. It's pretty wild, and the force negation is interesting because if as we saw from the deck list, Andrea put Bonde on D&T, I better add a Dread of Night. Playing these extra forces of negation effects doesn't seem very wise, but I guess he hedged against D&T. But force of negation gives him decent combo matchups.
And we'll notice that post board he also has crop rotation Caracas, but with no copies of Leovold in his deck, that's actually not going to be that effective, because I think post board that Michael is going to be more likely to try to go for a sneak attack or a Grizzlebrand line of play, in which case the Caracas isn't going to be that effective.
Yeah, sure, that makes sense. I mean, it's interesting because the crop rotation in the Caracas feels like new tech that I'm used to seeing in the Ren Rug decks, but I guess it might have just been adopted eternally by these decks, the Delver decks, to give themselves some room against the Dark Depths combo decks. I personally don't feel they've been favored against in the past, but yeah, that's a pretty good sideboard package there. I mean, he also has, well, I guess, how do you feel about Surgical? Surgical's always an interesting card that people miss sideboard, right? It's the most mis-sideboarded card in all of time, but he's against a combo deck. So I think when you've got that combined with Thoughtseize and Hymn to Turok, copies of Surgical Extraction could help him just to rip the combo apart.
Right, yeah, they could be a little bit more useful when you have discard spells, but I don't think Menguchi's going to bring in too many of them because they are kind of like your best second piece of disruption instead of your first piece. But let's have
Sure.
it over and look at Bonde's list to see what he has to counteract this. So he's playing a pretty stock sneak and show deck, like you mentioned before. The only difference is he's playing dazes as opposed to the 1 mana pieces of permission that these sneak and show decks usually play. You said that was a relatively common uptick recently. I think that's been popularized
Yeah.
by JPA as of recent. Do you think that that improves this matchup or makes it worse in comparison to the
I'm not
Pierces?
sure. So traditionally, that flexible slot that you said is normally rounded out by 2 copies of Flusterstorm and 2 copies of Spell Pierce, in my
Right.
experience. And I think those cards are way better at protecting against. Well, are they? I don't know. Days allows them to tap out for the combo, and I think that gives them those games where Oko will be more important. Like I said, the games where they could just slam a huge threat that traditionally Delver decks can't deal with. So actually, I think against Delver, Days might just be better because they don't need to have more mana sources in play. Don't forget, I'm assuming I didn't double check, but Andrea must be playing 4 copies of Wasteland. So being able to
Right.
tap out and play off the combo quicker, I think benefits them against Delver. I prefer Days to those old pieces of permission.
Yeah, I think I agree with you because another thing to keep in mind is that a lot of we didn't mention that Menguchi has six force effects, but uh, the dazes from Menguchi's side are soft pieces of permission, and the wastelands contributed to that as well. So usually these trying to fight back with against soft pieces of permission with stuff like spell pierce isn't really that effective. So I think the dazes help there, and also the 2 copies of Simian Spirit Guide are also going to help against those effects.
Yeah, that's always the worst feeling in the world. You think you've got it, and they have the Elvish or the Simian Spirit Guide.
Right.
Again, we see Bonde with surgicals in his sideboard, but I don't think, as I said about bringing it against combo, I think bringing in surgicals against Delver is
No,
bad. But someone in
definitely
chat
not
did
going to come
say
in.
that their opponent wants surgical their trops in the rug mirror. So there's no accounting for taste and style, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to come up this match, but
What cards in the sideboard do you like here against Bug Delver?
uh probably just the blast effects, but I think he's going to try to stay mostly lean. Blood Moon is an option, possibly only on the play, not on the draw. Arcane Artisan also as a hedge because Menguchi doesn't even have copies of Lightning Bolt since he's bugged.
I
So
think Artisan is very good because even if they have the bolts, they'll be cutting them, right? Because they're
right.
just so ineffective. And Artisan also allows the Sneak and Show deck to, it doesn't want to play a long game, but it can help it to play a long game where you can grind out a little bit and dig for the permission or the parts of the combo you need. Arcane Artisan's probably the best upgrade this deck has got in years, I'd hasten to say. I mean, I haven't looked over the whole list. I think that card's going to be very good here.
Yeah, I agree. So it looks like the players are ready, so we're gonna head down to the match. Get ready for game 1. So it looks like we have Bonde on the play, winning the die roll against a deck like Delver, always really relevant. What do you think of his hand? He's got a show and tell. He's got days to fight back, a couple of cantrips, but he only has 1 volcanic island as his land, which is a little bit sketchy against a Delver deck, and no creature
No,
payoff.
there's a City of Traitors there, second card in, right?
Sorry, I meant as a colored source.
Oh, I
Because usually
see.
against these Delver decks, you want to lead on an island if possible, so that you're not opening yourself up to
100%. So, I
wasteland.
mean, we can see a wasteland sitting in Andrea's hand. So, Andrea has a Delver plus Force to give him some hard permission, and he has a wasteland. Are
Right.
you in favor of, obviously after this ponder was resolved and the turn has been passed? Are you in favor of just like straight up wastelanding here?
Yeah, I think so because Menguchi knows that Bonde knows that he's on Delver. There's a little bit of
Yeah.
a couple step process there, but Menguchi knowing that knows that if Michael had a fetch land or a basic land, he would have definitely led on it. So I think that it's pretty safe to assume from Menguchi's side that
Next
he
level.
only
Bonde's
has
like,
he's just leading on it anyways, even though he has extras.
he's like,
I
come
mean, it's
on,
definitely
wasteland.
possible, but
The
I
ponder
think I would
has
definitely
found an
wasteland from
Emrakul on top
Menguchi's
of the
side.
library. No
Sorry?
shuffle. The ponder did find an Emrakul on top of the library, drew it into hand, and did not shuffle.
Yeah, so Bonde there, he took the risk. He decided to try to go for the turn 2 with Days back up, and just leave himself open to Wasteland.
Yep.
Unfortunately, got punished
Yep.
there, but I can respect trying to take a line like that, especially game 1
Yeah,
in a
I
matchup
don't
like
think it was
this.
greedy particularly. I think it was a fair enough line to take. We can see him here not actually casting a city, playing a City of Traitors last turn, but this turn he feels the need to, which I'm still surprised at because a third land gives him, I guess, show and tell Emrakul with Days. But
Yeah, he didn't need to
I
play
don't
it
know.
the previous turn because he knew that there wasn't a land coming, since he knew the card from the Ponder, but now that he's drawing a mystery card next turn, he wants to set up for a possible sneak attack next
Yeah,
turn, especially
that
with
does
days
make
back up.
sense. It's just a very rough spot to be in.
Totally, yeah. He's gonna need to draw a colored source pretty quick, but we know that Mengucci has the force here, so it. But that being said, Michael does still have two pieces of action, so he could just shove 2 turns in a row and possibly get there. But Mengucci's providing a pretty quick clock, and it's gonna close this door quickly, and we
His
might even
Delvers haven't
see.
flipped yet.
No, they haven't, but we might see this Oko come up as well, which would be pretty great.
Okay, the Delvers are almost certainly flipping now that this brainstorm is being cast, though. There was a
Yeah, so
hymn cast, but I'm falling behind with screen. I can't see what the hymn hit.
the him hit the days and one of the cantrips, I believe, and um
Uh,
Mengucci went for the upkeep brainstorm there, a play that you don't see too often, but with 2 Delvers in play representing a guaranteed 4 damage and changing this to a 2 turn clock, I believe, which definitely increases the want to make a play like that. And he's putting Michael on a 1 turn clock with force backup.
yeah, that's
He
it.
definitely likes the spot there, and that's game one. That was a quick game.
Yeah, I think that game was won at the point that Andrea had Force plus a blue spell and the turn one Wasteland. That was absolutely brutal because even top decking the second blue source land wouldn't have allowed him to combo through.
Right, yeah, exactly. So Michael taking a line there that um makes himself a pretty heavy favorite against everything except for a turn one wasteland and getting punished. Not necessarily.
Hmm.
It, it's a line of play that you have to respect because it's very difficult for a lot of people to make a play like that since it's kind of feel bad when you miss. But if he feels like it's the highest percentage line, it's you just got to do it even if you're going to instantly lose a game every time you're wrong. So it
I
looks
mean,
like
this is one of the
Mengucci's
arguments people
bringing
make
his
about.
sorry.
Oh, sorry, I was just saying that's one of the arguments people make about not having Wasteland in Modern is that it creates non-games. But in my opinion, there was just some deep and interesting thought processes and understandings of the format there. I thought that was an interesting game, even though it was very short. But sorry, continue about the sideboards.
Yeah, so we see Mengucci bringing out his pushes like we suspect. He's keeping it in decays, hedging against those blood moons and the possible arcane artisan. And we do see him bringing in the crop rotation and the Caracas. I'm not sure if I actually like that too much, but he doesn't really have many better options in the sideboard. He could
Sure.
possibly go towards Winter Orb or Sylvan Library. I think with Bonde being on only 3 copies of Emrakul and Mengucci already having 2 Okos, I'm not sure I would go towards that, but I trust his judgment better than mine probably.
Yeah, I think I think the Caracas Cop rotations are probably significantly better than say Winter Orb or Sylvan Library. Um, it just gives him some options. Also, the crop rotation can just turn one of his lands into a wasteland for a similar situation. So we could have the exact same kind of gameplay out, but it's a
Yeah,
turn
that's a good
one
point.
green source into a wasteland. So I think the card's got a lot of utility there.
So we see Bonde taking out his preordains, shaving an Emrakul, perhaps anticipating this Caracas coming in and already seeing the Yokos, and bringing in some Fluster Storms to permission back Jason Mind Sculptor to and Blood Moon as alternate threats. So he's really trying to present extra threats. He's not trying to waste time cantripping with preordain. It makes a lot of sense against Mengucci's soft permission.
Yeah,
Perhaps going to
agreed.
make his deck a little bit worse to something like him Turok because it could be he could get more disjointed draws. But I think overall that's probably a positive decision, especially on the play with these Blood Moons. It's pretty easy to accuse a win there.
That was a terrible opening hand with Bonde with just the City of Traders. And now, Bonde
I
is
think his
on.
second hand looks a lot better.
Yeah, definitely.
He's
It's a
got
question of
a
what you
piece
put
of permission.
with.
Red Elemental Blast is actually quite a quality sideboard card in this matchup because um it both stops Mengucci from having pressure with Delver Secrets, which is obviously the best threat against the Sneak and Show deck, and also it offers a piece of counter permission as well if the game
Yeah.
plays out slowly that way. So it's a really versatile card. The only really big downside of it is that it forces you to fetch Volcanic Island, which could create
Yep.
a
I was
situation
going to
similar
say,
to
we
Game
come
One.
back to that situation we talked about earlier where Days is better than the traditional flex spots of 1 mana counter spells because it forces the Sneak and Show deck to get 4 or 5 mana, and against a Days Wasteland deck, that's really rough.
Right, exactly.
It's the same reason, as much as I agree with bringing in Jace, it's not a great place to be. And the more we talk about it, the more I think that maybe Delver is favoured because bringing in 4 mana spells against the Wasteland Delver decks is just so rough.
It's tough. It's tough. Jace is when the Delver decks were Rug and were Grixis, Jace would definitely never be coming in. It's just too weak. They're too lean on the ground, and even if you manage to stick it, they have blasts and lightning bolt to clear it away. But against this bug Delver deck, it's definitely more enticing since it's pretty difficult for the deck to deal with a resolve Jace. But I definitely do agree with you where Michael is creating a risk where he's going to clunk up on more expensive spells, which is definitely not something you want to do against a strategy like this.
We see Bonde has passed back to Andrea here. This is turn 2, correct? And
Yeah,
Andrea's found
Andrea
a
blind flipped his
wasteland on top
Delver,
of his
which
deck.
is very relevant.
The old blind flip Delver. They always blind flip, right? Unless I'm playing with them.
Of course. You see that he opted to ponder instead of just casting a Tarmogoyf, I believe, which is an interesting choice to me. Perhaps not feeling safe with just this force negation and feeling content with the 3-power flyer as a threat and looking to find more interaction. He does have discard spells that he can find, which is additional upside to pondering and um, more pieces of counter magic, of course, would also be useful.
Yeah, I think he's either wanting a second counter spell that's free, or he's trying to hit his land drops so he can deploy an Oko and have force negation back up. Because at that point, he can't really lose too much, right?
Right. We see the downside of force negation coming up here, though, because Mengucci was not able to protect his threat. Not that he necessarily would have, but definitely didn't have the option. And we see him picking the Oko to force a negation. So being content with just the Tarmogoyf and the Gurmag Angler as
Well, I
threats and
don't
just
think
wanting
he
to
has
find more
much
permission.
options here because this Blood Moon will absolutely ruin him, right? How many basics
Right,
is
of
he
course. Yeah, he
playing?
definitely has to fight over it.
None. He has 0 basics. We're back in that world that I enjoy being a D&T player, where they don't play any basics.
Oh,
That
and
days of the brainstorm was big. So now Andrea
yeah.
has to crack his fetch, which he didn't want to do because it makes his brainstorm better next turn. Has to now instant speed brainstorm to find some permission to fight back against the days.
Well,
He doesn't. He just
he's
pays
just gonna
for it.
pay for the days, but he's gonna get
Oh
blown out by
no!
the second days. I think Michael just
That's it.
brainstormed into both of them, but yeah, Mengucci just knowing
That.
that that's game. Wow. Perhaps I underestimated Blood Moon in this matchup. I don't
Yes,
think that's something that can happen as frequently on the draw, but definitely stole a game there.
that brainstorm hitting 2 days. I didn't even notice 2 days, and I was like, "Oh, is he going to pay? Is he going to dig? What's the plan here?" And then, that was great. That was interesting. There was multiple brainstorms involved. Potentially, Legacy's great. God, I love Legacy. So, are
Let's
you
see.
making the adjustments for being on the play now as Bug Delver?
I think from the Bug Delver side, not much would change. I'd be interested to see if Michael wants to make his deck a little bit more lean when he's on the draw. That's definitely the side of the matchup that could benefit the most from, or rather, not benefit the most from being on the draw. But it looks like he's not going to change much. He's still opting to keep the Jace over the 4th copy of Sneak Attack, which seems fine to me. And still likes these Blood Moons on the draw, which is I can definitely see. It definitely seems pretty
I
good.
think Blood Moon might be, as we saw there, it's just strictly better than Show and Tell for the majority of the time for Bonde. I mean, obviously, if there's a threat in play, that's the issue.
Right.
But I guess
That's
the
that's
beauty of
the
Red
big
Elemental
if, right?
Blast being able to kill Delvers, right? So yeah, he needs to. I mean, I guess there's a world where you try and counter a Tarmogoyf to then resolve a Blood Moon afterwards and things like this. There's some interesting back and forth with these decks because Blood Moon was just so unbelievably backbreaking there when you were tapped out.
So just as a reminder, this is an elimination match. So this game 3 is worth a whole lot. It's going to be the loser of this game is going to be eliminated from the tournament. But we see both players keeping 7. Mengucci has both the crop rotation and the Caracas in his opening hand. Probably not what he wanted, but perhaps better than having neither copy. And we can see Blood Moon in Michael Bondi's hand as another main threat. He's just full of threats. Actually, it looks like he's just going to be planning to jam a few turns in a row.
It's pretty funny that we talked about the utility of crop rotation earlier by getting a Wasteland or a Caracas, but it cannot fetch a basic in this list. It cannot help against the Blood Moon.
You never
Blood
really
Moon's
see basics out of Delver decks except for the 2-color ones.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's been periods where they've adopted them, but like, I stopped playing a lot of Legacy while Red and Six was legal because I got so sick of it. But yeah, I remember the days of I played Ghost Quarters at GP Prague a couple of years ago, in addition to Wasteland and Rishadan Port, so that against the Delver Menace, I could just blow up lands and laugh. It was fantastic. So I'm glad we're back to those days again.
So Mengucci thoughts using seeing a hand of all threats. Deciding to take the cheapest one, which makes a lot of sense. So he has a copy of Days, so getting rid of the cheapest one helps to leverage that. And also it makes it more likely that, especially with Michael Bonde having this Lotus Petal, makes it more likely that he'll have to take a turn off after jamming a threat. But we see the Snapcaster Mage out at the sideboard coming up pretty big, and the Caracas too as an additional mana source. He's able to Thoughtseize again and offer some disruption and also put a threat onto the table, no matter how small it is.
So we're seeing a Thoughtseize targeting Bonde with a Force of Will plus a blue spell and a Daze and the hand of Mengucci. I mean, he's only got a Snapcaster to threaten with, but he has got a lot of permission here. He's going to be ripping apart Bonde's hand. Bonde casts a Brainstorm. Is he gonna find everything he needs once again?
Yeah, I think he's just trying to protect his threats.
Yes.
Perhaps values this the sneak attack and or the chase more than he values getting the full Ancestor Recall ability on Brainstorm, which is definitely something that you need to consider game to game. There's no like strict rule.
You are
Brainstorm's
correct.
at 3
He
pieces of
played
permission.
Yes. So the Brainstorm was more defensive this time. He wasn't necessarily digging for permission, as you correctly
Right.
stated. He maybe just wanted to hide things on top of his library, which is one of the many modes of Brainstorm. But he still ended up hitting 2 Dazes in a Flusterstorm.
Yeah, I'm gonna be curious to see what he does here, because he could Brainstorm Shuffle and then still Flusterstorm, or he could Daze, but that kind of sets him back a turn considering both of his threats are 4 mana. And means that he doesn't have the Daze later. But with an Ancient Tomb and a Lotus Petal and Mengucci tapped out and a second copy of Daze, I'm curious if he's going to just try to jam a 4-mana spell here. I think from his perspective, I would do this, because the only way you get punished is if Mengucci has 2 copies of Force of Will or 2 copies of Daze, or some combination.
Well, there's also the Court Rotation can get a Wasteland Land to take him off a red source, but of course does Mengu know about the Daze in Bonde's hand?
No, he doesn't.
No, neither the Flusterstorm. So actually, oh, sorry, there is no Volk. The screen. I'm watching this through a thin veneer of just like jam. So, I thought there was a Volk, but maybe I'm incredibly wrong.
No, Mengu playing bugged over, so no Volk. Bonde opting to get the island.
It was a Volk on Bonde's side. I thought it was a Volk on.
No, it was a Scalding turn. He decided to fetch a basic island, but the Jace was met by a Daze back, and then it got forced. So Michael not able to stick the threat, but also not much going on left in his hand. Unfortunately for Michael, Andrea had the 2 pieces of permission that he was hoping he wouldn't, and now he's kind of on empty. He kind of has appeal against the Snapcaster Mage and any potential future threats as well.
Well, it did look like Andrea might be low on gas with an 8-turn clock on the 2/1 Snapcaster Mage, but a Brainstorm into a Ponder, and there's following up with an Oko next turn, and now he's drawn a Gurmag as well off the Ponder. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and an Oko.
Yep.
That Oko is going to make that Emrakul look pretty embarrassing too if a show and tell comes off the top. Although, if Michael's able to draw a red source this turn, the sneak attack might be able to do some relevant damage. Sneak attack not the best against Caracas, but it does require you to have an additional red source. But if he's able to draw a runner red source, he is going to be able to fight through that pretty easily.
It's interesting because we talked earlier about how 4-mana spells are bad against Delver, or not bad, but clunky and awkward.
Definitely less good.
Ironically, now with the new tech, with Oko in the deck and with the Caracas crop rotation sideboard, sneak attack has just got significantly better than just telling a threat.
Right, especially showing and telling a threat like Emrakul, like we were talking about earlier. You used to be able to just put Emrakul into play against Delver decks, and especially game 1, they would basically have no outs. You would even, if you had both threats in your hand, you would almost always opt to put the Emrakul in instead of the Grizzlebrand. But that dynamic has certainly changed in recent days with Oko and Caracas and various other cards that people are playing.
It's quite exciting that one of those cards is a brand new card that's obviously power creep and pushed and banned and nonsense. That's not the exciting part. That's kind of the frustrating part, I guess. But the crop rotation Caracas tech has been there for like years. It's just more of a recent addition in the last sort of 12 months or so. So, yeah, it's exciting to see innovation like that in Legacy in the space.
something that was adopted, like you said earlier, for the rise of the Mirror Lake decks that just happens to be a little bit of flash damage against the Sneak and Show decks. Sneak and Show has kind of been, I don't want to say under the radar, but a little underrepresented compared to previous
Yeah,
years
that's fair.
in the most recent times. So people not really hard targeting it, but it's still hitting some of the splash damage.
The Oko has landed. The Oko
Yeah.
has landed. And now we're going to see a sneak attack with 2 red souls. No, there's still
Only
mana
one,
off.
unfortunately. So this Caracas is becoming relevant. Mengucci making a fool of me once again. For talking poorly about his sideboard choices. But even this daze this daze is really smart. It plays around a copy of Spirit Guide or a copy of Lotus Petal that Michael might be
Yes.
sandbagging in order to power through this Caracas, and that's going to be enough for Mengucci to take the match.
Daze has been the absolute all-star of that match for both players. It's been crazy how good Daze was there.
Yeah, an innocuously powerful card from both sides of the matchup. Obviously a mainstay in the Delver decks, but a little bit more unusual from the Sneaky Show deck, but just as powerful.
I guess there's an irony in me saying, "Oh, I think actually maybe Sneaker Shot's a bit better with Daze," and then it got smashed by Daze.
Yeah.
Live by the Daze, die by the Daze. I think we've got to do a thing next. No, don't. No, brackets update. I can read that.
Yeah, so with that match, Michael Bonde has been unfortunately eliminated, going the way of other players such as myself. And Andrea Mengucci advances to the lower, advances further on in the lower bracket to play the winner of yourself and Phil Gallagher, actually. Oh no, sorry.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, to play the loser of yourself and Phil.
Right. So Andrea's got a good history of wrecking me on camera, so perhaps I need to win this just so. Well, I either lose this or lose to Andrea. Then I guess.
Actually, I think I'm reading that wrong. Actually, it's not that. But he will play the loser of someone.
Right.
I think it's actually the loser of Javier and Autumn, if I'm reading this correctly. But regardless, he's one step closer to taking the title. And who do we have up next? I think it's we have a raffle coming up next, I believe. Is that right?
Yes.
Yep.
We have a Goblin Raffle Master. I don't know. I was trying to make a magic pun. That was okay, actually. That wasn't so bad.
So this raffle is for six of these wonderful dice brought to us by a card hoarder. So you can win these dice by typing in card hoarder into the chat, and one person will be randomly selected.
And the chat goes wild. It's without the exclamation mark, right? That is correct.
So up next, we're gonna have Phil Gallagher playing Maverick versus yourself, and you're playing Nick Fit, correct?
Yes. So I put Phil on either Death and Taxes or some sort of green-white mid-range deck, or Bomberman, because I've seen him on Twitter being quite excited about Bomberman, or something to beat the green-white mid-range decks that he knows that I also like. So perhaps him going out of his wheelhouse to play elves, for example. So I was like, well, I need to play something that can beat those. So I think Pernicious Deed's pretty good against this deck. It's also open deck list, so I was like, oh, Cabal Therapy can't be so bad, right? And lo and behold, he did register Maverick, but it's a slightly different build of Maverick. There's no Stoneforge Mystic, for example. So I didn't fully predict because I've got like 2 collective for my side and things like that. So I'm feeling relatively confident, but it's also like midnight here, and I've been up for like I've been up since 7 this morning. So I'm feeling a bit tired at this point. So we'll see, But I'm feeling good, but tired. But I do love a bit of Nick Fit. It's very enjoyable to try and cast dumb cards.
Oh yeah. The veteran explorer is definitely a sick creature when it pops off and it works well for you.
Yes, indeed. But the problem being that Phil likes to play decks with basics in them. So I guess he might,
yeah, a little bit less good in that sense, I suppose.
Yes, indeed. So I don't know. I'm gonna know about exactly how I sideboard against that and what my plan is. But we'll see how it goes. I'm excited though. It's gonna be fun to bash some mid-range legs together. It doesn't involve blue for once. Oh, we're coming to the end of the.
And the winner is Lord Darkview. Congratulations. You have won a set of dice, and I believe that Julian will be messaging you for that if I'm correct. So anticipate that. But that'll be it for this round. Congratulations again to Mengucci, and thank you, Vince, for being here. Good luck in your next round.
No, thank you, and thanks for chat for being lively and excited about how great Legacy is with us. And I guess I'm gonna get ready to stomp or be stomped.
That's how it goes.